I am Jared Sargent. I'm from outside of Toronto originally. I'm now living in Vancouver.
We're going to talk to them a little bit about what that program was and what it stands for. I guess I'd like to start, guys, just by asking, what was your position at the schools that you worked at and the names of the school?
So I worked at Meihua Elementary School, named after a little flower, Korea's national flower, and I was the English native speaking teacher there.
And
Great,
I worked at Dangdong Elementary School, and I was the foreign English teacher there.
great. So, guys, you were both. Can you just tell me a little bit about the program, GEPIK, the Gyeonggi English program in Korea? Just explain, how you guys applied to the program and how you were accepted. And Jared, I guess we can start with you.
Sure. Well, we actually both went through the same route. We started with a website. It was a Canadian website that was recommended by a friend. They ended up not being extremely helpful, but they did put us in touch with a recruiter in Korea who then helped us get positions with the GEPIK program.
Basically, we had just graduated from Teachers College, and there weren't many jobs in Canada, so teaching abroad was something that appealed to us because we like traveling. And when I did my research about public versus private, it seemed that, especially with having teaching degrees, going public was just better for us for many reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into. But
Sure. Fantastic, guys. That sounds great. The next question I have for you guys. So, what would a normal class schedule be like, and how many foreign teachers were at the school? Can you guys tell me that situation?
Sure. I think ours are probably a little different. Mine was unusual at first in that when I first started working at the school, there was another foreign teacher, which is uncommon in public schools to have more than one. But because of the area that Meihua is in, there's actually several other elementary schools that don't use their government budget for the foreign teacher. So the school was actually able to have us both at the same time. They didn't renew her contract once she finished, but we were able to use the funds for other things. But in terms of schedule, start at 9 o'clock. Well, start at 8:40 basically. Teach 4 classes in the morning. 5 classes. 4 classes in the morning, and then sometimes I would have a regular class in the afternoon, but usually the afternoons were open unless I had a teacher class or a kindergarten class, in which case those were fully my responsibility for planning and everything. There was no co-teacher there. And then
I was just asked, Meredith, was that a similar situation with you? Did you?
no, it was actually. Yeah, it was actually totally different at my school. My school was very well funded, and the city that I worked in had a mayor who was really pro-English education. So I was the only foreign teacher at my school, but we had a special English center. So I taught 21 regular English classes a week, which usually amounted to maybe 4 every morning, and then in the afternoons, where a lot of public schools, the teachers kind of have it as planning periods, I had to teach additional English classes, which I was paid for. So my teaching schedule was usually from 9 until 4:30, with only 1 or 2 breaks, but I was compensated for it, and I really like teaching, so I enjoyed doing that.
And I should clarify, when I said the afternoons were off, I didn't mean I wasn't working. Like Meredith said, that was time that was used for planning and that kind of stuff.
As much as you would like it to be off, Jared, you actually had to
Oh,
work.
yeah, of course.
Fantastic, guys. No, I think that's an excellent point because you have, just because you're in the same program, technically, it differs between town essentially
For
and
sure.
school districts. So it's kind of similar actually to to the states, and I'm sure other countries as well. Some school districts have higher budgets, so that's interesting. Let's kind of lighten things up here, guys, and I want to ask about something that has been humorous to you guys. Like, what are some of the funniest things that's ever happened in any of your classrooms in your experience in Korea?
Hmm. Well, I would say that one thing that was consistently funny for the entire 3 years that I was in Korea, I never got tired of seeing uh, the kids would come in with whatever written on their shirts or whatever. They had the funny
English
poor
phrases.
English phrases on their clothes.
Yeah.
I remember one boy. It was funny because he had no idea what he was wearing. Um, he was a rotund, shall we say, young man. Uh, I think he was in grade 4 or 5, and he was wearing this T-shirt that said, in big letters across it, said "Lusty" and "Lolita." So I thought, it's probably
Yes.
he doesn't know what that means, but I got a real good laugh out of it. And that kind of thing happened all the time.
Yeah, one of my kindergartens wore a T-shirt all the time that said, "I just brought sexy back." So I thought that was pretty funny. She's
That
like,
is
"Cool."
interesting. Hey, as long as they're trying to promote English, right?
English, exactly.
That's what
Right,
it's all
right.
about. That's too funny, guys. Next, let's talk about the educational philosophies of your schools. Jared, what are the school's attitudes and beliefs about education?
Well,
What are they focused on?
I would say they definitely, specifically in English, there's a push for speaking and listening, like conversational ability. Um, there's other areas as well, but I found that speaking is definitely their most important area. That's why I guess they're hiring expats to come in and teach because they want the natural tone, the natural rhythm of speech that they can't necessarily get from someone that speaks it as a second language.
Sure.
Um, it's a little bit. It was different than what I learned in Teachers College because there's a lot of emphasis on studying, being like memorizing stuff, basically.
Sure, a lot of
Uh,
memorization, yeah.
so, not that our methods are better or worse or anything. I'm not making judgments. I mean, every school is different, but that was an adjustment. I
Sure.
had to. I wasn't used to seeing that, but it was something that was very easy to adjust to.
Sure. Meredith, would you agree? Was there a similar emphasis on
I would
speaking?
agree. Yeah, my principal also was a big supporter of the English department. So where I worked, we were constantly giving the students activities to engage with English. So we were constantly promoting or putting them in situations where they could use their English. For
Great.
example, every Thursday I did broadcasting. So I would be on air in all of the classrooms on the TV, teaching them different expressions. So today I'll teach you some phrases you can use when you're shopping. And they'd repeat after me, and we do contests as well. So at the end of each broadcasting, I give them a phrase in Korean. My co-teacher would say the phrase, and then they'd have to write it in English to practice writing and enter it in the contest. And the following Thursday, we'd draw 10 winners and give them
Wow.
prizes. So that was good, and we did English markets. So in English class, we'd give them stickers if they participated to reward them. And at the end of each semester, they'd use their stickers to come to an English market, and we'd cash the stickers to money, and then they'd buy things, but they had to speak English in the market.
That's
So
really interesting.
yeah, that was really great, and it was a contrast, I guess, from what you see in the schools usually, which is just memorize, study, repeat. This
Sure.
was
Very
practical.
creative.
I thought that
Yeah.
that was really great. So the principal, both of her kids live in America, so I think she could see the benefits of having useful English and practice putting it into real situations and contexts.
Wow, that sounds like very, very creative, and sounds like the kids really would
It was
enjoy
great.
that.
And I was at my school for 3 years, so we worked together. I worked with the English teachers to put these different programs together. So I encourage anybody who goes with GEPIK into a public school to take a look at what's working and what's not, and just try and promote English in any way they can outside of the classroom.
Great. That's fantastic. Guys, on to the next question. Jared, I'll start with you. What are some reasons a teacher would like working in the GEPIK program, and maybe specifically at your school, Maewa?
Oh, there's lots of reasons you might like working there. If you like, I welcome challenges. It was definitely something that was new to me. When we decided we were going to go to Korea, I had no familiarity with the country, the people, the culture, the food, the history, anything. So it was a great opportunity to learn about all of those things. Meihua specifically, the staff that I worked with, in my it changed a lot, but it kind of had settled by my third year, and my coworkers were incredible. They were willing to bend over backwards to help, and they made my life really easy, and it was great.
That's fantastic.
I would also say, especially for people who are thinking about teaching, it gave me so much patience to work with. So my students' level of English was substantially lower than Meredith's was. So it's not uncommon that I would be in a room where if I had no co-teacher, they would only understand body language and that kind of thing. So coming up with strategies to deal with kids that don't understand what you're saying, now having come back and working with kids again here, it's like a breeze. It's so easy because you're unconsciously doing all of these nonverbal things, and my level of patience is through the roof. So it's been very, very beneficial to me to have had that experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. It seems like you learned a lot. And Meredith, how about yourself? What are some of your best reasons?
I really liked working at a public school. The first thing was definitely structure. I really liked going to work. We went to work 8:40 to 4:40, and there's rarely a time where you have to stay over. And in that time, I feel like even though I taught a lot, I always had enough planning time. I feel like a lot of teachers these days aren't given enough of that planning time, so maybe their lessons suffer. In a public school, you're definitely given enough time, so you're prepared. And why I liked working at my school coincides with why I liked being in a public school is that I was constantly with co-teachers for my grade 3 to 6 programs. So as a new teacher coming out of Teachers College, I thought I was prepared, but you really don't realize until you get in a class alone how underprepared sometimes you can be graduating and having your own class. So I liked being in public school because I feel like I learned so many strategies from the teachers I worked with. To become a teacher, a Korean teacher, they have to go through so many tests and so many challenges that they're just, to be honest, they're the best teachers I've ever seen. They have a great education program over there for the teachers. I really believe that. They're
Especially
the
young teachers.
They're the hardest working people. So they taught me a lot. So that I loved my school because I loved the teachers I worked with, and I loved being at a public school because I really had a lot of support and structure. So
I feel like I should add one more thing.
Sure, I'd love to hear it, Jack.
One benefit to working in the public system, or with GEPIK specifically, your holidays are
substantially higher than...
Yeah, you're going to get more holidays than you would in the private school, and they ask that your holidays fall, during winter break and summer break, but you do get a significant chunk. Like I think it's about 10. You get 20 days total, so you get to take about 10 days here and 10 days there, and with weekends and stuff, it ends up being really, really nice. Whereas if you're in the private system,
it's only 5 and 5. Yeah.
or even less. Like some people, you hear horror stories of people that don't get any, and
Yeah.
so that was
But it's
something.
always structured for public schools,
Yeah,
sure.
you're always going to get it. You're going to get. You can take half and half. If something for some reason the calendar was different that year, maybe you could take a longer on in the winter or the summer. But it's nice to have those two opportunities to get away from work for a little while.
You
Sure,
have a
guys.
lot more security in a GEPIK contract, I think, than in a
Oh yeah,
private school contract. It's stronger.
your school can't go out of business
Right.
Sure.
like a Hagwon could.
It's good. It's a good point. That's a good point. That is true. Guys, while we're on the subject, I just want to talk about sick days. Say if you needed to take a couple of sick days, if you were really sick and needed to go to the hospital, etc. Are they more supportive? How does that work?
Um, so that's something that really I think is subjective, school to school, and even within the school, person to person, it's going to vary. My school, I called in sick twice, I believe, the entire time I was there.
Hmm.
Um, and all I got was concern from my coworkers. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Can we bring you anything? We hope you get better. And then the next day back after a sick day, oh, the principal was worried about you, and then going to see them, and
So more
them being
supportive.
just
Yeah.
concern. So yeah, at Maywa, anyways,
Hmm.
sick
Sure.
days were.
Of course, it can vary. Like that, some schools' principals would be a little bit upset and wish you could
Sure,
make
sure. I
class,
think
of course, which is understandable. Yeah.
yeah, the cultural view of sick days is like, and it's something that you see with kids too. I mean, kids come to school sick, their
Sure.
parents send them in. It's just the way they do things.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Guys, how about this is a good point here, number 6. What is something that might be difficult for a new teacher? Arriving, you can honestly talk from the point of arrival to starting at your new school. Let's talk a little bit about that. Jared, do you want to start?
Sure. Some things that I found difficult personally. I found working with a co-teacher was actually an easy transition. Something that I enjoyed. It was more the classes that I had to do on my own, so where I wasn't supported. The first instance of this was right when I arrived. They asked me to start doing a teacher education class, so I was to work with the teachers.
Hmm.
I had never taught adults before, no experience with it. I'm a certified in primary, so this was way out of my zone. And then on top of that, all the teachers' English was at completely different levels. So trying to plan lessons for people, the one end of the room, they're understanding everything I say and they can have a conversation, and the other end of the room is wondering why we're not practicing the alphabet. Um, and then, so I did that for a semester, and then all of those teachers, well, most of them ended up moving to other schools, so there wasn't enough for my class. At which point they asked me to teach a kindergarten class. So that put me in front of 30 kindergartners twice a week with no co-teacher.
Wow.
That was a
Challenge, to say the
challenge,
least.
definitely. It was difficult to figure out what approach to take with these kids. But because of the freedom I had with that class, I was able to try a million different things, and by the end of my time there, the kindergartners, that was, no matter how bad of a day you're having, if you walk into a room full of 30 kids that are overjoyed to see you and squealing and screaming your name and just want nothing more than to listen to you talk,
Yeah.
like, that's it stops being a problem.
Sure. That sounds great. Meredith, how about yourself? You have a difficulty that comes to mind with
Well,
arriving that would be hard for a new teacher?
yeah. Jared covered the challenges with teaching, but I think another one of the challenges that I found was the communication from my co-teachers, and I think many foreigners will find this. These teachers, like I said, that they're amazing and they're great in the classroom, but the Korean teachers don't just teach. They have many other jobs and lots of other paperwork they're constantly doing instead of lesson planning. I feel lesson planning sometimes comes secondary to their other paperwork.
Wow.
So there might be a staff meeting or a field trip or a class cancellation, and they won't tell you because they're thinking about a million other things.
Or even they didn't find out until right
Exactly.
before.
So I think right away a tip for anybody who's going there to deal with those challenges is you just have to think about how much they're dealing with, and don't get upset or angry. They genuinely forget to tell you these things. It does happen.
Or they don't know.
You just have to be
Yeah.
flexible and go with it. You really do, because a lot of teachers hold on to that. They didn't tell me, I'm so angry.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Let it go. It's it's happened. Okay, it's gonna happen again.
Like,
So
I think a common example of what Meredith's talking about. So depending on how familiar these potential teachers are with the Korean culture, they might know hwaeshik, which is the after work dinner sort of. It's just everyone from the office or school or whatever will go out together, and usually the school will have a social organization within it. You know, they'll go for dinner once a month or something, and every teacher pays a small amount.
Sure.
But a common trouble that like the foreign teachers have is that we find out about the dinner 10 minutes before everyone's going. So, and then it's kind of
it usually begins with, "Oh, didn't I tell you?"
But are you invited to the dinner, or
yeah, you're invited. You're definitely, it's more than encouraged to come. I mean, not going, if you're new, you're probably going to want to go to all of them. It's something that's like extenuating circumstances would be okay, and usually it's okay to leave a bit early too, but it's something that happens, you know. I can't tell you how many times, oh, Jared, you stay at school till 4:40, but then I'd hear at 4:30, oh, Jared, at 5 o'clock we are all going to blank restaurant for whatever. And you're thinking, okay, well, I got to go make a bunch of phone calls because I had plans. But
you guys brought up a great point, because I feel like this is really important to know about things happening last minute. Would you guys agree that that is part of Korean culture and perhaps East Asian culture, that you kind of just have to to go with and have an open mind about? It's not us judging Korean culture at all. It's just something that happens, correct?
Yeah. It's just a part of the way they do things. You just got to be flexible.
You have to go with it and let it go is my advice. I always said that. You can't hold on to that stuff.
Yeah, that's so important.
It's going to keep happening. So important. Just be flexible. Be open.
And your attitude about it too will affect it. Like, if some people get really worked up about it, they, oh, I got to go to this dinner. Like, oh, I'm sorry, someone's going to buy you a meal and pay for everything?
Yeah.
Oh, muffin. So if you think about it in that way, you know, like, oh, okay, just, it is what you make it.
I'm sure it's a great experience, kind of, meeting with the teachers outside of school and kind of getting to know them more on a personal basis too. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic.
Some more advice quickly before we finish on that is just for teachers not to take it personally. I find teachers take, when they're put in situations like that, very personal. It's not personal. They've forgotten, or whatever has happened. It's not just forgetting. Any situation.
I think a lot of it is finding out.
Yes, don't take it personally.
Sure.
Nothing against you.
That's such great advice. Well, guys, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. That was our teaching video with the GEPIK program here with Jared and Meredith. And just to make it known, guys, you don't actually have to be a certified teacher, but to apply to the program, you do need a TEFL certification. However, you heard Jared and Meredith talk about going to Teachers College. Guys, can you share with everyone where you guys studied? I think that would be a great way to wrap up.
Sure. So yeah, like you said, you need a TESOL or TEFL, but the alternative is to have a teaching degree, which is the route we took. We had just about, how long before we went, was it?
Like 6 months.
Yeah, I would say about 6 months before we went to Korea. We had just graduated from we got our graduate diplomas in primary education at Griffith University in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia.
Fantastic.
It was
And
amazing.
yeah, I can only imagine how amazing that experience was. So for all you teachers out there, there you go. The world is your oyster, and these are two Canadians who traveled to Australia to study, and then they taught in Korea. So it's amazing to hear your stories, guys. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey,
Thanks,
glad,
Matt.
yeah, glad we
Yeah.
could help.
Great. All right, that was perfect, guys. So I'll cut that out, and we'll just jump right into the neighborhood video,
Okay.
and we'll finish up. Guys, I think just gonna talk about the school. Like I'm gonna say, so here's the neighborhood video. Mention the school, and maybe if you guys can kind of give me descriptions or school tours, so because teachers really want to understand what the schools are actually like. So just a brief explanation of what the classrooms are like, or however you want to describe it. It can be short, and then I'll ask you guys individually what is the neighborhood like, outside of the schools.
Do you want us to
So,
be together for this?
yeah, sure.
Okay.
All right, I gotta say
Well,
first.
actually, does one person want to take it? It's up to you guys.
I don't know.
Well,
It's for your editing or whatever, like however you want to post it.
I didn't live in the neighborhood at my
Oh,
school
okay.
because I
Then,
lived in Meredith's apartment.
Oh
yeah,
yeah, that's true. We had one apartment.
Like
sure.
I can talk a little bit about my neighborhood around the school, but I didn't know it that well, and all I know is that it was shitty.
All right. Well, if, with that being the case, uh, Jared, well, you can say that. That would actually be interesting. Be like, oh, I actually chose to live in another neighborhood.
I can be more eloquent about the neighborhood that the school's in than it was shitty. Like
That's all
I'm
right.
not gonna make it sound bad.
I mean, you could just say like I chose to live in a neighborhood that I enjoyed a little bit more. Just put
Yeah,
it like
well,
that.
we could explain what we did because I'm sure if people are couples and they want to go over together, they'll be interested
Sure,
in sure. sort of what we went through.
Oh my God.
What should we leave out?
Yeah,
I
I
don't
know.
think we need to get into it actually.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't. We
That's
shouldn't go
another
into.
video. Yeah, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that I lived because it was okay with each of our schools. We shared Meredith's apartment, and my school gave me a living stipend, which is not
I
uncommon.
don't know if you want to say that. We could just say we live together because my school was not ended up not being okay with it. You'll not lie to my principal,
Yeah,
so I
Oh,
wouldn't
they
be.
didn't like that you guys were living together?
No, my
Yeah.
co-teacher,
we thought they
my
were okay,
co-teacher
but
ended up telling my principal that Jared moved out.
Oh
That's the
no.
only because I said then we're leaving. It got very complicated. So
Sure.
I would just
Yes,
say,
it's kind of strange. Like some school, I mean, of course, they wouldn't be okay with that if they're, their own, uh, Koreans doing
real
that, of course.
yeah,
But
if you're
foreigners
not
are like, oh, that's acceptable,
right.
But to be honest with you, yeah, we're finding out like a lot of schools these days they're not in favor of hiring couples now because they say some schools say they kind of they're like a gang if they try to work together. But anyway, yeah, well, let's just talk about each one of your neighborhoods. We don't even have to. Uh,
We
I
can
I'll
just
mean,
say
I'll
we
let
live together and leave it at
I'll
that.
let Meredith handle
yeah,
most of it. If you have any questions about the school neighborhoods, then I'll interject maybe, but for the
We can
most
talk
part,
about.
cool. Yeah, that sounds great. Mary, you can just say, just say our apartment. Just say our apartment was nice, or just explain it, saying our, and
Okay,
people
I'll
get the
explain it.
picture. They'll be like,
So the
oh, okay,
apartment.
cool. All right, here we go. Ready, guys?
I think so.
Do
you got it.
you guys need any water or anything? Like in this awesome intermittent. Good. That delicious Vancouver pure mountain spring water.
You got it.
All
How's that
right.
Philly tap treating you?
Yo, Philly. I was just gonna say that. Philly tap water makes delicious rolls. I hope you guys know that. All right, guys, here we go. So we are with Jared and Meredith, and we are going to discuss the neighborhood of the respective schools and where they lived. So we will start with Jared. Can you describe your school and kind of give us a little school tour, and then we'll talk more about the neighborhood.
Okay. Well, my school, walking up to it, the first thing you would see is a very large rectangular gravel. I guess at first glance it would look like a soccer field. It's also got track markings around it. And then around the perimeter, there's like some playgrounds for the younger kids and some teeter-totters and monkey bars and stuff. But very big, like a full-sized soccer field. And then along one side of it was the school. It was 5 floors. The first floor had, well, we had a special education room, which not a lot of schools do. We had the principal's office and the administration room, as well as the teacher's cafeteria and some kindergarten facilities. Then on the first floor, we had, on the second floor, we had what was called the teacher's office. It was a big room. It also served as the vice principal's office. It was where staff meetings were held, and a lot of resources were stored. As well, on the second floor was the nurse's office, and they had a special room that was used for a class the kids take to study their own culture. So from the hallway, the class looked like an old-fashioned home, Korean-style home.
Interesting.
And inside they had the heated floors and everything, and they would have special events in there. The rest of the school was just regular classrooms, which they're not too much different from what you'd see at home. One whole side of it would be chalkboard. Usually the teacher's desk would be at the front. Then you have all the students' desks, and then at the back maybe some billboards and some storage. There was a computer lab on one floor and a science lab on another floor. We also had a multi-purpose room right near the English rooms, so during our winter camps and summer camps, I was able to use those rooms for games and different activities. They would use it for parent-teacher conferences and stuff as well. One thing that I found interesting about the school that was different was the way they heat and cool the schools, and it's not what we're used to. There's no central ventilation. Even the newer schools aren't really built the way we're used to. They will have windows all on one side that open, usually with no screen, but usually they open all the way. So in the summer, that's your... There would be one air conditioning / heating unit as well. So that's your heater or air conditioner. And the hallways, what I'm getting at is that the hallways are not climate controlled.
Sure, they're cold.
Sometimes in the middle of winter, say, going from your office to the classroom, you got to put your jacket on. But that's just normal for Korean schools. The kids, it's not abnormal for a kid to just wear their jacket all day. It's a part of their outfit. They never take it off.
Interesting. Interesting.
It's another thing to adjust to. Not better or worse, but different.
That's good to know. That's definitely good to know. Meredith, how about yourself? How would you describe your school?
Jared basically, I think, described a typical elementary school. Mine was in the shape of an L, and there were 5 floors, and the L boarded in a large gravel-type field. So we had sports days, and the kids have gym out there. And what's interesting about my school, I guess, is the size. It was very large. Yeah. So each class, there was about 7 classes of that grade. So there was 7 grade 3 classes, 7 grade 4 classes, etc. And my school went from kindergarten to grade 6. So I taught up on the 5th floor. So half of the section was this English zone, which I've talked about, and the other half was some grade 6 classrooms. So what was interesting to me was just the size, because you'll learn if you go to Korea is that they build up, not out. So to have a 5-story school is very interesting.
And your English zone was...
And my English zone was
really
exceptional.
Cool.
Yeah, it was very nice.
I can't believe I forgot. I got to add in one thing that I found interesting when I first started. The school has a greenhouse where the older students do some agricultural projects. and a small. They called it a farm, but it was a circular cage with big rabbits and some chickens and a rooster. So they had their farm. Yeah, it was interesting, and you could always hear the rooster crowing throughout the day.
Did the rooster have a name, Jared?
Not that I knew. I don't think. Yeah, probably a Korean name. But
Yeah, that makes sense.
we also had a brand new. It was constructed while I was there, like a $3 million brand new gym / auditorium.
Great.
So that was pretty nice.
And something that I found very interesting was the school cafeteria. In public schools, the students eat lunch at school, and it's provided by the government. So at lunchtime, all the kids line up, and they get a tray, and it has 5 spaces in it, and they'll line up, and one will be filled with rice, and one will be filled with soup, and then the 3 smaller slots will be filled with meat, kimchi, and vegetables, and they'll get a piece of fruit or a yogurt or something healthy for dessert on the side. So I thought that was really interesting and really positive, was to see them all eating a healthy lunch together, and you know what they're eating. And
not your typical American or Canadian school lunch, huh, guys?
No, no.
Like
healthy.
Healthy, and
that's
kids
fantastic.
don't care how spicy it is or how weird it looks. Like,
they can't leave till they finish, so I thought that was good too.
That's another great rule. Wow, that's fantastic to hear. Wow, that's very, very interesting to hear.
Yeah, they're all getting squares.
Guys, that's a great kind of portrayal of your school neighborhood. So let's kind of transition into your neighborhood, and before we talk about housing, where you guys actually lived, maybe explaining how close you were to the schools that you worked at. Meredith, how about we start with you?
So we lived in Gumpo City, and within the city we lived in a division called Sanbon, and Sanbon is on the Seoul subway line. So first of all, I thought that was huge for us because we'd be able to literally walk outside our apartment and get on the subway and be in Seoul in 40 minutes. So I think it's important when choosing an area where you live is how close you are to the subway line and transportation in general.
Mm-hmm.
So we liked that, and the city itself had, I thought, everything we needed. It had an E-Mart. So I think a city's made it when it has an E-Mart, which is like Walmart.
Not even our city, just our block.
Yeah.
Like our little neighborhood we didn't have to go more than we never had to cross a street to get anything, really.
Wow.
So around us in our area, there were lots of restaurants and bars and shops and places to go. And
there's a park, there's gyms,
yeah. And in our building itself, there was even a movie theater and restaurant, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow.
We lived in an office tel, is what it's called. So within our building, there were also offices and apartments.
Great, that's really nice.
Yeah,
so
but
basically, it's exciting.
awesome.
I mean, it seems like you guys live, despite not living in Seoul, which is, I think, it's a good time to say that GEPIK, supplies teachers outside of the city, right?
Right.
Of Seoul, and clearly, even though you were outside of the city and technically in the suburbs, you essentially lived in a town outside of the town, correct?
Yeah, it was interesting the way that it's set up. Like the metropolitan area of Seoul is different than the surrounding areas, right? So, like you said, we were in a suburb, but we were also still on the Seoul subway line.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that was different for me to adjust to. But it was like traveling into Seoul. If you were to drive into Seoul proper, there was never a time where you went, oh, okay, now we're out of our city and now we're going into Seoul. It was just one big, tall city everywhere.
You still felt like you were in the city.
Out and out and out and out. Yeah, so we had everything we needed where we were. So I wouldn't have changed that. I loved where we were.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's so awesome to hear. Guys, can you explain, Meredith, do you want to start explaining what your apartment layout was like?
Sure. So we lived in a studio apartment in the Investel. So when you walked into the building, there was a doorman, and Sorry.
We were in the O+, not in Vestel.
Okay. the name of the building was not called the Investel, but it was
Sure.
Officetel, which is
That
a term.
our friends next door were in the Invest.
Okay. Anyways.
Okay.
Okay. So we were. What were we in?
We were in the O plus.
So we were in the O plus. When you go in, there's a doorman, and what I found interesting in the apartments is a lot of larger apartments, like these Officetels, they have doormen who work. We had two doormen, and they each work 24-hour shifts.
Wow.
So I think I could never figure out when exactly they switched. I want to say 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and they'd be there for 24 hours. And also when you walk into the apartment, there's everybody's mailbox. So I think you get
Not
a
locked.
perception right away of how safe and how trusting Koreans are, and that the mailboxes are open. You can take anybody's mail.
Wow.
Nobody ever took our mail. We never took anybody. So I think that the system does work. And then we lived on the 14th floor. And when you got up to the 14th floor, there was probably, I'd say, 20 apartments on each side of the hall, and there was balconies on each end. So in our apartment, we didn't have a balcony, but if you wanted to go out and get some fresh air, it wasn't very large, but you could go and sit on the balcony. And for our apartment, it was a studio. So when you walked in, there was a small closet on the left, and you could leave your shoes. In Korea, everybody takes their shoes off before they go into an apartment. And then immediately on your right, there was the bathroom, which was also the laundry room, and the shower. And it was this wet room, so the shower is just mounted on the wall, so when you shower, everything gets wet. It was weird at first, but I ended up loving it, because
Oh, it's
the
the
whole
best.
bathroom's your shower.
And you're cleaning it constantly, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have to get out. You know when you finish your shower and it's warm in the shower, but then you have to get into the cold bathroom?
Sure.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
The whole bathroom is warm.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point.
Yeah, and there was the toilet and the shower and the washer and the dryer and the sink, and there was a little bit of storage in there as well. And so right when you walked in, the bathroom was on your right, and then our small kitchen was on the left, which was basically one small counter and a sink. We had 2 gas burners and no oven. We ended up buying a toaster oven, so we could do some baking and cooking in there.
Great purchase for anyone going.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then
Buy one when you get there.
from there, we had a futon and a TV with a TV table. And on the right, we had a dining room table with 4 chairs. We ended up, because we lived together, we had 2 closets. So we had the closet that's built in, and then we had a large wardrobe. And towards the back of the apartment, behind the couch, which was a futon, so we could have friends stay over, we had our double bed. And on the right, we had my desk. So I could do work there, and a bookshelf. So we actually, even though it was a studio, we had everything we needed. Everything had a place. There's lots of storage. So
It sounds very comfortable. Very comfortable.
at first when we walked
It was.
in, I thought, I can't do this. It's way too small.
I walked in and I thought it's way bigger than I thought it was going to be.
But then you realize you're not paying for it as well. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It ended up being everything we needed, and you just realize how little you need, I think, especially when you live in a studio apartment. So, and I'll mention at the back of our apartment, the whole wall, floor to ceiling, was a window.
Oh, yeah.
And it overlooked the subway. So at night you could hear the subway coming and going, which we ended up getting used to. And in the morning we'd get the sun. So we'd have sun all day. So it was a great apartment. Lots of light.
Wow.
Some people get these little apartments with small windows they can't open, and it's a little dark and depressing, but ours was great. It was this huge window, so that we really lucked out with our apartment.
That sounds fantastic, guys. I'd just like to mention, I wanted to talk about the school kind of supporting all teachers coming. Right, they would pay for your rent, and you would pay small bills. Can you kind of just talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Part of the contract is that the school pays the rent. So it's very interesting, because when we first came, we started getting all the bills, and I remember thinking, oh no, we shouldn't be paying anything. And it's very clear in the contract that the school pays the rent, but you take care of anything else.
Yeah.
So the bills in a month that we accumulated were internet and cable, which was very minimal. A lot of teachers, I think, don't even get cable. We got the package because the previous teacher had it, so we just continued it. And we enjoyed watching CNN and BBC, and sometimes there's action movies.
Yeah, they play CSI on the 24-hour loop if you find the right channel.
So we paid that bill. And then we paid the apartment fee bill. Now, because we lived in an officetel, it was quite higher than a lot of our friends paid who lived in smaller apartment buildings. Our bill could run anywhere from $140 to $240 a month.
Still very reasonable.
This was the
Very.
shared one. This covered things like the doorman and the mail and the garbage room and the people, the staff who cleaned the building, who cleaned the halls. So I realized where the money was going. It also, in that bill, I believe, included water, and heat. So if we...
So heat is done with water.
Yeah.
They heat the floors using hot water. So the way they do it is it's kind of shared by floor. So our bill would vary depending on how much water each of the people used. Like if one apartment was warmer than the rest, which doesn't happen because part of the culture is everybody be the same. Like the nail that sticks out is the one that gets hammered. So keep your heat at the same temperature as everybody else's.
Sure.
But if somebody used more, then everybody would just pay a little bit more instead of that one family paying a lot more.
In the winter, we paid the most, but again, you realize where the money's going, so it wasn't a problem paying that bill. And the third bill that we paid was gas for cooking, which we did not do a lot of because in Korea you can eat out very cheaply. So our gas bill was 80 cents a month.
Yeah,
so,
86 cents.
Yeah. When you look at what you're getting and what you're paying for, yeah, it's really worth it. And like I said, our building was great, so we didn't mind paying that fee. But if you live in a smaller building, maybe without a security guard, your monthly bill will be less, much less.
Great. Thanks for sharing all that, guys. I'm going to go to the last two questions here, guys. I wanted to ask, what can teachers do in your neighborhood or in your city or in Korea in general outside of school? Just discuss some of the various activities that you guys would really enjoy doing together.
There's so much to do. One of the first things I did was join a baseball team with the Seoul Baseball League. Matt, I believe you may know something about that.
The SBL, sure.
Yeah.
That is, Jared, can you explain a little bit about that? That's a...
Sure, it's a baseball league in Seoul run by and for foreigners.
Great.
Foreigners being non-Koreans, right? So we've got mostly teachers. There's a few military guys from the base that come out and play. Tons of fun, lots of events. We play at a field in Gwacheon. We had food trucks come out. We had a local craft brewery come out and sell refreshments. You could buy hot dog. It was a great way to meet lots of like-minded people.
Great. What other things, guys?
There's a friend of mine was really into rock climbing, and Korea's mountains are excellent for rock climbing. Very much exposed rock, and lots of clubs open to membership by foreigners.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed going out with my girlfriends in the evenings and on weekends. There's coffee shops everywhere, especially where we lived, on every corner, and you'll find they stay open until well into the night, into the early morning even. People are drinking coffee, so I really like going out for coffee. There's, I'm a girly girl, so there's tons of makeup shops. I really like going shopping with my friends, looking at all the products. Everything's very cheap, so that's fun. There's lots of markets and lots of areas to go shopping. So for girls, like I love shopping in Korea. There's always a new place or a new store to explore, and there's lots of places to go and get manicures and pedicures, and just for girly girls, yeah, there's lots to do. It's really fun.
Sure, that sounds awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun, guys. Guys, to wrap things up, what are some key points that you would talk about with, what personalities or expectations should you have in order to live happily if you were a new teacher coming to Korea? What would you say?
Before we came, I actually talked to a lot of people who lived in Korea, and their advice was what I lived by, and I think why we ended up staying for 3 years and having such a successful time while we were there. And it's so simple. It's just to be open. Be open to everything. You're going to Korea. They're not coming to you, so don't expect anything to be the same. Don't expect to understand what's going on. It's all part of the experience. Just be open, take it in, try and learn from it. Don't get upset by it. Don't hold on to it. Be flexible, and I think you'll have a great time. That's my advice.
Yeah, I would definitely echo the open-mindedness. And another thing that really helped me, I think, was a willingness to learn specifically about, the culture that we were in. So the first thing I did when we arrived was find the book that most Korean people that I could find would recommend to learn about their culture from the point of view of someone who knew nothing. So then I was able to, after the first week, I was able to, when faced with something that was new or different or confusing, it wasn't anymore because I could understand what was happening or why it was happening. Not being able to communicate made it more difficult, but at least I had an idea of what was happening. And then also after that, a willingness to learn a new language is really big. I wish that I'd had the chance to learn more, but even just when you get there, spending the one afternoon that it takes to learn the alphabet and practicing, like reading all the signs when you're walking around. You
It
can
helps,
learn them.
right?
Oh, and you can do it so quickly and so easily because so many of the words are just English, written, pronounced a little bit differently or written with a different alphabet. So no one should feel threatened by that alphabet. Like, it looks confusing at first, but it's smaller than the English alphabet. They only make one sound. It literally takes like 2 hours to
And
learn.
everybody's going to ask you, if you go teach in Korea, did you learn the language? And when you can say, yes, I can read it, you feel pretty good.
That's great. So you can obviously get by without learning language, but clearly a message that you guys are sending is it's important to learn characters and
A little, yeah. It's
Sure.
important to learn
A little,
a
yeah.
little.
Sure. Well, guys, it was fantastic. That was Jared and Meredith. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to speak with us today.
Thanks, Matt.
Sure,
Great,
thanks.
great to talk to you.
Thanks, guys.